Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a good look at what really makes life feel rich and, meaningful.
Mhm.
We'll be digging into some ideas around happiness, success, and sort of how to navigate the complexities we all face day to day.
Yeah, it's a big topic.
It is. So get ready to maybe have some assumptions challenged and hopefully walk away with a fresh way of seeing things.
Absolutely. And one of the first things that often pops up is this kind of tension, right, between being happy with what you have
Right.
and then also striving for more. It sounds almost like a contradiction. Like happiness is being satisfied, but then success comes from dissatisfaction. How do you square that?
Yeah, it does feel like a bit of a puzzle, doesn't it? Like, are we just supposed to be content, or is that complacency? Where's the sweet spot there?
I think a key idea, maybe, is that real freedom doesn't always come from getting more stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about consciously choosing not to want certain things.
Okay, like letting go.
Exactly. Like, think about that Socrates story,
Uh-huh.
in the marketplace, seeing all this amazing
Oh,
stuff.
hi. Yeah.
And his big takeaway, his freedom, came from realizing how much of it he just didn't need, didn't want. It's like decluttering your mind, you know. That can be just as freeing as getting something new.
That's a really powerful reframe. So it's less about the constant chase
Hmm.
and more about what you actively decide not to chase. It kind of reminds me of that Alexander the Great and Diogenes story.
Oh, yeah. Guy in the barrel.
Right. Alexander
Guy in the barrel.
conquered the known world, right? But he's impressed by Diogenes just chilling, completely content.
And Diogenes basically says, I don't want anything you have.
Exactly. It just highlights that massive difference between like worldly ambition and
Yeah.
just inner peace. It makes you ask, where are you putting your value?
Right. Alexander's wish, it implies something's missing. Diogenes is just there, present.
Mm-hmm.
And that ties right into our daily lives, I think.
Mm.
A lot of suffering, it doesn't come from the actual task we're doing.
Yeah.
It comes from not being fine doing the task at hand,
Right.
just resisting it internally.
Right.
If you can sort of reframe things, find acceptance in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
you can dodge a lot of unnecessary struggle. Think about those little daily frictions, right?
Yeah.
Can you shift how you see them?
That definitely rings true with what you hear from, really successful people looking back. So
Mhm.
many of them say, I wish I'd enjoyed the journey more. Instead of just focusing purely on the goal, the destination, it's a big reminder that life isn't just a checklist, right?
Precisely. And, here's a useful thought exercise.
Yeah.
Imagine you could talk to your past self 5, 10, maybe 20 years ago,
Okay.
but you don't get to give them stock tips or anything. No spoilers.
Right.
What advice would you give? Often the best advice isn't about changing big decisions. It's more about navigating those times with less anger,
Yeah.
less intense emotion, less internal suffering. A lot of that struggle was probably optional, wasn't it?
Yeah. Like achieving something, but being miserable the whole time doing it. That miserable success.
Exactly. And like we were saying, the journey. That's pretty much all there is. That's the bulk of life.
That's a really important point to hang on to.
It really is. Because, we humans,
Yeah.
we adapt so quickly. We achieve something.
Paint it. Done.
Yeah, check. And almost immediately, we're back to wanting the next thing. Boredom, desire, repeat.
The cycle.
Right. So if like 99% of the experience is the journey, the day-to-day grind,
Yeah.
it makes a ton of sense to actually try and make that journey enjoyable, meaningful.
Okay, so how do you do that? How do you shortcut that desire contract, as you put it? How do you step off that treadmill?
Well, I think the key is getting really, really picky about your desires.
Picky, how so?
We just absorb so many wants, don't we?
Yeah.
Things, opinions, status, often without even thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But you start to recognize that a lot of those unnecessary desires are actually sources of unhappiness.
Yeah.
Then you can be more intentional. Like,
Oh.
do I really need this? Do I really want that? And honestly, if you want real success in something that matters to you, you have to focus your desires. You can't chase everything.
That flows really naturally into talking about fame and status, another area where desires can just take over.
Oh, absolutely. And what's wild is how alluring fame is, even though we know the downsides, right?
Totally. Loss of privacy.
Constant scrutiny, the pressure, the haters. I mean, the
Mhm.
cost is high.
Huge, yet people still chase it.
They really do. It's powerful.
It feels a bit tricky, though. Like, if you're putting your work out there, you probably want some recognition, don't you? But yeah, fame for fame's sake. That feels hollow. What's the healthy way to think about it?
I think it's much healthier, more sustainable to see fame as maybe a byproduct, something that happens because you're doing something worthwhile, something that adds value.
Okay, so focus on the work itself.
Yeah. Think about earned fame, or maybe just earned respect in your community, your tribe. Recognition that comes from actually doing good, contributing something. Historically, the people we remember.
Like who?
Well, spiritual leaders like Buddha or Jesus, sure, but also artists, scientists, even, you know, conquerors who reshaped things.
Mm-hmm.
They offered something more than just wanting to be known.
Right, right. It was about their impact, not just their celebrity.
Exactly.
But then you run into this modern problem, especially online. Everything you say is recorded forever. If you change your mind, learn something new.
Boom, hypocrite.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How do you navigate that? It feels like it discourages growth.
it's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
Because learning means correcting errors, right? Updating your views. If you're chained to every single thing you've ever said publicly, you can't evolve.
So what's the difference between genuinely changing your mind and just like lying to look good?
I think it comes down to authenticity. Are you genuinely revising your view based on new information? Or are you just trying to manipulate your image, maybe to gain status? There's a difference. Being true to where you are now is key.
It feels like trying to impress people who don't really care about the real you anyway. It's just
It's
exhausting.
totally draining and ultimately pointless, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your energy is so much better spent earning the respect of the few people you actually admire. Forget trying to get everyone to like you.
Yeah.
And these status games, they have such a strong pull. Probably goes way back evolutionarily. In hunter-gatherer times, status maybe mattered even more because you couldn't really store wealth easily.
Ah, interesting point. So status was the main currency in a way.
Could be. But today, maybe those games aren't the most fulfilling path.
Because now we have other games to play, like building things, creating wealth.
It's exactly. Wealth creation, building a business, offering a service. That can be more of a positive sum game, with concrete results. You build something, people benefit. Status games can sometimes feel more zero-sum. You go up, someone else goes down.
You can't deposit status in the bank, right?
Yeah, exactly. You can't.
And yet, you see incredibly wealthy people still chasing status like crazy. Philanthropy galas, exclusive clubs, buying sports teams.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
It suggests that drive for status is really, really fundamental.
So wealth doesn't just cancel it out.
Doesn't seem to. Maybe because evolutionarily status is the older game. Wealth, in its current form, is kind of newer on the scene. And maybe that's why it's harder to feel done with status, There's always another level, another comparison.
Yeah.
Likes, comments, followers. The leaderboards are everywhere.
It's a game with no finish line? That's kind of depressing.
Huh. Can be. But I like that Jimmy Carr line you mentioned. Trajectory is more important than position.
Yeah, I liked that too. Focus on your own growth, your own path forward.
Right. Rather than constantly craning your neck to see where everyone else is.
Yeah.
That feels more controllable, more meaningful.
Definitely. So, okay, let's shift inward a bit. Talk about self-esteem, self-respect.
Right. And you made a really strong point earlier that the worst outcome is not having self-esteem.
Why is that so critical?
Well, it just seems like the foundation for everything else, doesn't it? How you approach challenges, relationships, your inner life.
Mm-hmm.
If that foundation is shaky, everything else is harder.
Totally agree. And building it often involves stuff that looks like sacrifice in the short term.
Like what?
But it's really an investment in the long run. Think about basic virtues.
Mm-hmm.
Honesty, reliability, cooperation.
Okay.
Like maybe lying gets you ahead today. But long-term, being honest builds trust, builds stronger connections. It creates win-win situations. It's like that stag hunt idea versus the prisoner's dilemma.
Right. Stag hunt is cooperate for a big win. Prisoner's dilemma is protect yourself even if everyone loses.
Kind of, yeah. Cooperating, playing the long game with integrity, even if it feels risky sometimes, usually leads to better outcomes for everyone, including yourself.
Yeah.
How do those principles play out in your own life, your own network?
So living by those virtues, it's not just about being good. It directly builds your own self-respect. And that fuels self-esteem.
Exactly. You act in ways you respect, and that reinforces your sense of worth. And it attracts people who operate the same way. Plus, a huge part of self-esteem is that inner belief, right? That feeling of, I can figure this out.
Instead of always feeling like someone else has the answers.
Right. Trusting your own judgment, your own ability to learn and adapt.
That connects to that idea of implicit knowledge, doesn't it? All the stuff you know without even realizing you know it.
Totally. That deep intuitive understanding you build up through experience. It's often way bigger than what you consciously know.
Mm-hmm.
And your subconscious, it's always watching you, grading you in a way. So if you want high self-esteem, you got to earn your own respect. Your actions need to line up with your values.
And you mentioned that internal golden rule. I thought that was really insightful.
Yeah, the idea of treating yourself
Mm.
like you wish others had treated you, with kindness, understanding, respect.
Mm.
Especially important if maybe you didn't get that consistently growing up.
It's about giving yourself what you might have missed. A powerful way to think about self-talk.
For sure. And there was that interesting distinction between the feeling of being loved versus the feeling of loving someone else.
Right. What was the takeaway there?
Well, the argument is that actively loving can feel more expansive, more empowering than just receiving love.
How so?
Because seeking love can make you feel dependent, needy sometimes, but actively giving love, choosing to love, that's something you have agency over. It can enrich your life just as much, maybe more.
Interesting perspective. Okay, let's switch gears slightly to pride. You called it the most expensive trait. That's pretty strong.
Well, I think it often is. Because too much pride, it just slams the door on learning, doesn't it?
What do you mean?
If you're too proud, you can't admit you're wrong. You get stuck defending past ideas, past actions. You can't adapt. It links back to that fame thing, being trapped by what you said before.
But surely you need some confidence, some pride in your work to even try ambitious things. Where's the line?
Yeah, it's a balance. I think the key is being willing to, start over, mentally at least.
Yeah.
To let go of past wins and losses and just tackle the next thing.
Like entrepreneurs who pivot constantly.
Exactly. They're not rigidly proud of the first idea if it's not working.
Yeah.
They adapt, they learn. It's about seeing challenges as chances to grow, not threats to your ego. Happiness then becomes less about arriving somewhere and more about the process of figuring things out.
Okay, that makes sense. And that leads us right into freedom, time management, things that are crucial for that learning and growth.
Definitely. And the starting point is recognizing that deep down, everyone is self-prioritizing. We all are, even if we don't admit it.
Right. We make choices based on what matters to us.
So the real question is, how can you do that consciously? How can you reclaim your time, your freedom? You mentioned practical stuff like maybe using text more than calls,
Yeah.
having a system for email.
Yeah, or even getting help managing social stuff if it drains you.
Right, anything that carves out more space. Because that space, that unscheduled time, that's where serendipity happens, isn't it?
Yeah, the unexpected opportunities, the moments to just think or act on a sudden idea.
Exactly. That quote, the overscheduled life is not worth living. It really hits home. Our natural state is probably closer to freedom. Thinking about never having to be somewhere specific at a specific time, that's a powerful goal.
Being alarm clockless, that's the dream for many.
That's a symbol, right? A symbol of controlling your own time
Yeah.
and just optimizing your day for your energy.
Like doing the hard stuff when you're sharpest.
Yeah. Focus work in the morning, maybe meetings or easier tasks later. It just makes sense. And that idea, inspiration is perishable.
Act on it now.
Right. If you get curious about something, dive in. Don't schedule it for next week. Learning that comes from real desire is so much stickier than forced learning.
Totally. And you also warned about premature commitment.
Yeah. In a world with so many options, careers, relationships, projects, locking yourself in too early before you've explored, that can be a big mistake.
So be willing to change course.
Absolutely. And kill things that aren't working very quickly. Don't just let them drag on, draining your energy. Cut your losses.
Which requires being able to say no, right? And managing interruptions. That seems key to protecting that focus time.
It really is, that filter.
Yeah.
Would I ask someone else to do this? If not, maybe you don't need to do it either. Be ruthless in a good way about protecting your flow. Ignore stuff that doesn't matter.
All this seems to come back to mindfulness perspective, managing your own mind,
Totally. It starts with observing your thoughts, your feelings, almost like a detached scientist.
not getting swept away by them.
Exactly. Then you can be choosier. You start seeing patterns.
Yeah.
You realize, wow, most of my problems aren't out there. They're created in here. By how I interpret things, the stories I tell myself.
So you can actually reduce the number of problems you have just by changing your internal reaction.
A huge number of them, yeah. Unnecessary problems disappear. It's like that idea of the news cycle being a mimetic virus.
Ah, explain that.
It just infects your mind, right? Pulls your attention away from your own life, your own well-being, towards things you often can't control anyway.
So fix your own life first.
Pretty much. There's something to be said for getting your own house in order before trying to rearrange the world. Aim for what you call holistically selfish goals. Achieve real success in your own stuff. That's a solid foundation.
And that involves questioning the scripts we're given, societal expectations, guilt trips.
Definitely. You got to decide for yourself what actually matters. And really think about the big decisions. Career, partner, where you live. Spend serious time on those.
You mentioned the secretary theorem for decisions, like interview a third, then pick the next best.
Yeah, it's a mathematical idea, but the principle applies. Explore enough options to get a sense of the field, then be ready to commit when you find something good, and crucially, be ready to bail out quickly if it's clearly not working, especially in relationships.
Right. Okay, let's touch on pessimism. We seem wired for it.
Evolutionarily, it makes sense, right? Better to assume the rustle in the bushes is a tiger, avoids ruin.
Survival instinct.
Yeah. But today, the world is, in many ways, much safer. And the upside potential is often huge, nonlinear. Investing, relationships, business.
So we need to consciously override that pessimism.
I think so. Recognize that finding what works is often a search function. You try things, most don't work, but the ones that do can have massive payoffs. Compounding is powerful.
So optimistic overall, but maybe skeptical about specific things.
That sounds about right. Learn from failures, iterate fast, and try not to get stuck with labels like pessimist or optimist. Just try to see reality clearly. And please, don't define yourself by past traumas or negative stuff. Stay flexible.
Okay, so we circled around happiness quite a bit. After all that, what's the bottom line? What is happiness?
You know, maybe it's simpler than we make it. Maybe it's just basically being okay with where you are.
Just.
Right.
Okay. Not ecstatic.
Not necessarily ecstatic, no. More like content. Not feeling like something major is missing right now. Not constantly wishing things were different. It's ironic, but people often report being happiest during those quiet periods when nothing is really happening.
Huh. So the chase itself might be the enemy of happiness sometimes.
Could be. Always seeking novelty can actually dull our appreciation for the present. Detachment, in this sense, isn't about not caring. It's a natural result of realizing what truly matters to you.
And we seem to need something bigger than ourselves to focus on.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But just endlessly ruminating on problems, circling the drain, that's usually not helpful.
Okay, so if happiness is about contentment, how does actual success fit in? How do people achieve big things?
Well, the really successful people, they seem less focused on watching success porn,
Hmm.
reading about success, and more focused on,
Action over observation.
yeah, fueled by a really strong desire, intense focus. That line, you don't need mentors, you need action, has some truth to it. If you really want something, you'll likely be lying awake thinking about it.
Yeah. Those unclosed loops, they keep you up.
Exactly. And change that comes from that deep desire, that real understanding of why you want it, that's way more powerful than just forcing yourself with willpower. It's about aligning what you want with what you do.
Let's talk about anxiety and stress then. Seems like the modern condition.
Totally. Anxiety, maybe the emotion du jour, especially for driven people. It's useful to maybe distinguish stress reaction to outside pressure from anxiety, more of an internal reaction.
And the key is?
Address the problems.
Yeah.
Don't just try to feel better about them. Reflect on them to find solutions, not just to wallow. You even mentioned contemplating death.
A bit morbid, maybe, but potentially useful.
It can be. As an anxiety resolver, puts things in perspective. And think about wasted time. It's not just unproductive time, it's time you weren't present. Whatever you choose to do, be fully there. Your attention is everything.
It's amazing how much interpretation shapes everything. Same event, totally different experiences.
The power of narrative, right?
Yeah.
The story we tell ourselves. Ideally, maybe we move beyond just positive or negative labels and just let things be.
Yeah.
Observe without instant judgment.
But desire can cloud that judgment, can't it? Like, I knew it was a bad idea, but I just wanted it so much.
Oh, absolutely. That's a classic trap.
Right.
And here's another fundamental truth bomb. We think we can't change ourselves, but we can. We think we can change other people, but we can't.
Oof. Yeah. So focus on changing your reaction to others.
Pretty much the only thing you can control.
Yeah.
Other people change on their own schedule, usually through their own insights or maybe trauma. Nagging or criticizing rarely works.
Positive reinforcement is better.
Almost always. Compliments. Acknowledging the good.
Mm-hmm.
Much more effective.
And in relationships, asking that hard question, do you love the person or just their potential?
Crucial. If you're constantly asking, should I be with this person? The answer is often already there, isn't it?
Probably no.
Probably. And relationships built on resumes, shared hobbies, similar backgrounds, ticking boxes often lack that deeper glue.
So what are the better reasons?
Simple stuff, really. Actual love, trust, enjoying their company, kindness, their spirit, their energy, the stuff that's harder to quantify. that ineffable quality, a feeling of real connection, unity.
You had an interesting take on decision-making, too. When facing two paths, choose the one with the short-term pain.
Yeah, if both options look roughly equal overall, but one involves immediate discomfort and the other pushes it down the road,
Yeah.
take the immediate hit.
Why? Rip the Band-Aid off?
Kind of.
Yeah.
We tend to avoid short-term pain, even if it leads to bigger long-term problems. So consciously choose the harder now if it leads to better later. And just be really intentional about the big three. Who you spend time with, what you do, and where you live. Revisit those regularly.
Where you live. People don't think about that enough, do they?
So often, no, it has a huge impact. And obviously, having kids with someone, that's a decision with permanent consequences, relationship status aside. Choose that partner very, very carefully. Shared values are key.
More than just shared interests, how you handle challenges, family, money.
Exactly. The deep stuff. And remember, the secret to a happy relationship. Two happy people. Don't try to fix an unhappy partner. It rarely works.
Looking back, it feels like we're often the same person deep down, aren't we? Even after years of change.
Yeah, that core self seems pretty consistent, which is maybe why taking yourself too seriously is a trap. It limits you, prevents that freedom and happiness we talked about. Don't think about yourself constantly.
And apply advice to yourself, not just dish it out.
Huh, yes. Recognize your own past selves in the advice you give others. And remember, for real mental change, understanding beats discipline. When you truly see the truth of something like realizing a friend isn't trustworthy, or grasping the link between smoking and cancer, or really confronting mortality, your behavior often changes instantly. No willpower needed.
The insight itself drives the change.
Right. Wisdom isn't just knowing sayings, it's that personal rediscovery of truth through experience. You can be told something 1,000 times.
But you don't really get it until you live it.
Exactly. That's why people get annoyed when rich or famous folks talk about being unhappy. We think that won't be me. We think we're the exception.
Everyone thinks they're the exception.
Pretty much. So you need to personalize these ideas, these maxims. Make them relevant to your life now. Don't just memorize wise-sounding phrases.
So true understanding means you can figure it out from scratch, not just repeat it.
Yeah. If you have to memorize it, you probably don't fully understand it. Mastery in anything eventually leads you to philosophy, finding those general truths in your specific field.
And our philosophies evolve, right? Like your views on politics or child raising.
Hopefully. Sticking rigidly to old beliefs despite new evidence isn't a virtue. You mentioned becoming maybe looser in parenting.
Yeah, moving away from strict rules towards fostering agency, maybe.
Exactly. Focusing on unconditional love, self-esteem, letting kids learn from their own mistakes. Maybe questioning some modern advice like strict cry it out, or fearing co-sleeping, looking at broader historical norms.
And teaching them how to think, not just what to think. Critical thinking, evolution.
Right. Encouraging questions, preserving their natural curiosity and their willfulness, rather than just domesticating them. You want a wild animal, not just a trained dog, metaphorically speaking.
Huh. Okay, shifting to bigger picture stuff. History, power, great man theory versus massive forces.
It's probably always both, isn't it? Individuals can have huge impacts, especially now with leverage like tech and media.
Widening the gap in the status game, maybe?
Could be. But massive forces, demographics, economics, culture, they shape the landscape individuals operate in. That pendulum swing between collectivism and individualism.
Marxism versus capitalism.
Yeah, keep swinging. And you always have that tension, even in democracies, of the majority potentially oppressing minorities.
And ultimately the role of physical force. Thugs with the guns.
It's the bedrock, isn't it? Political power rests on that potential, however distant it seems sometimes. These different societal structures are always competing.
Okay, bringing it back to the individual navigating today's world. News overload is a big one.
Huge. It's overwhelming and often paralyzing. The key is focusing on what you can actually influence or control. Your own life, your community.
Not getting sucked into every global crisis.
Exactly. Be informed, sure, but don't let it drown your own well-being.
Right.
And maybe question our overconfidence in things like modern medicine sometimes. Be critical.
You mentioned GLP-1 drugs. Potential beyond weight loss.
Yeah, intriguing stuff about addiction, maybe cancer prevention, metabolic health,
Yeah,
but then huge questions about access and equity.
always the trade-offs. And
Yeah.
getting past your past, that's a skill.
A crucial one, not being defined by victimhood, processing tough experiences and moving on. Remember, attention is the real currency. Where are you spending yours? News, regrets, or the present.
There's maybe an advantage to starting as a loser, builds drive.
Possibly, but not something you'd wish on your kids.
Yeah.
Better to cultivate gratitude, right? And that idea of the alpha who serves others first, that's about self-respect, not just being nice.
Interesting. And society pushing back on success, that's counterproductive.
Seems like it. We should probably be rewarding positive contributions more, not tearing people down just because they succeeded. Incentives matter.
Wow, we've covered a ton of ground. From happiness and desire to status, self-esteem, freedom, and even the nature of understanding itself.
It's all interconnected, isn't it?
Yeah.
How we manage our internal world profoundly impacts our external experience.
Definitely. That's just a glimpse into some of the ideas we've dug into today. We really hope this deep dive has given you, our listeners, some new perspectives, maybe spark some thinking.
Yeah, hopefully some useful takeaways there.
Yeah. What resonated most with you? Any questions still lingering? We'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts. So, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff.
It helps us know what you're finding valuable.
Exactly. And join us next time for another deep dive. Thanks for listening.